If you are not aware, so Chris Smalls, he has organized the first Amazon union in the country. I'm pretty sure all of you know that. I've talked about it on here before. Recently, Chris Smalls was actually at the White House, and he was actually at a Senate hearing where he addressed Lindsey Graham. And I really like what he had to say here. Now, there are some people that are not too happy about this. I'm going to talk about both sides, but let's go ahead and get started with this discussion that he had here with Lindsey Graham, because I think Chris really nails it right here. So let me go ahead and put this up.
Thank you for having me. Well, first of all, I want to address Mr. Graham. First off, it sounded like you was talking about more of the companies and the businesses in your speech, but you forgot that the people are the ones who make these companies operate. And if we're not protected, and if the process for when we hold these companies accountable is not working for us, then that's the reason why we're here today. That's the reason.
That's right. So I do want to talk about that for a second. I'm glad that he said that. It is the people that make these companies operate. He's 100% correct. Without us, without the workers, the companies cannot operate. Now, there's arguments about this that can go into AI and can go into robotics and where manufacturing is heading in this country. Yes, that is also a concern. But right now, the companies need people to work there. They need workers. So if you don't treat your employees fairly, they can leave and go somewhere else, or they can do what Chris Smalls is doing and what other companies have done, or employees at companies have done over the past year. And that is organize and try to start a union so that they can get the rights that they deserve. We shouldn't even have to do that in this country. I mean, come on. The United States has a lot of money. We should not have to do that. But I like the fact that Chris brought it right back to the workers, because the workers are important. They're the most important asset to the companies, even if the companies do not realize it, because without them, you cannot get the work done. So I'm glad that he brought that up.
Why I'm here to represent the workers who make these companies go. And I think that it's in your best interest to realize that it's not a left or a right thing. It's not a Democrat or a Republican thing. It's a workers thing. It's a workers issue.
Okay. Let's talk about that for a second as well. He said, this is not a left or right thing. Thank you so much for saying that. A lot of times with issues in this country, politicians have a tendency to try to make it a left-right issue. Not just with unionization, but also with other issues as well. And I want to give you a more recent example. The George Floyd protest. Somehow, that became a left-right issue. That was not a left-right issue. That was a human rights issue. What happened to George Floyd should have never happened, whether you're on the left or the right. But what happened, you had the Democratic Party came in. And again, like I said, they get involved with these movements. They co-opt it. They water it down. They try to use it to get elected. They say they're going to do things to help the movement, and they don't. They cave. They just virtue signal. Democratic Party got a hold of it, ran with it. Next thing you know, they're kneeling in kente cloth. They're giving us a Juneteenth holiday. They never passed the George Floyd Policing Act, even though I will argue that that bill actually gave more money to the police. They didn't end qualified immunity. Nothing was done. They just gave us virtue signals like they usually do. But that's another example where they took an issue that was not a left-right issue, but they made it that way. And with this particular situation in reference to Amazon, I don't see how you can make this a left-right issue. This is about the workers getting the benefits they deserve, being treated fairly, being able to take a break. Like, people should be able to have a lunch break and not be worked to death. But then we do live in a capitalist society where those things are allowed because the people at the bottom are exploited. So I'm glad that he said that because that needed to be said. And of course, Lindsey Graham would try to make this a left right issue because that's what politicians do. They have to try to find a way to make it different. Now, some people have argued, and I'll get into this in just a second. Some people have argued that they felt like by Bernie Sanders and AOC coming to that rally, that they made it look like the Democratic Party now supports this. And some people felt like they didn't like that wasn't a good thing, that now people on the right are going to point to this and say, oh, this is something the Democrats are doing instead of something that the workers are doing. I get both sides of that. I know Chris Smalls wants to get the message out to as many people as possible. So I get where both sides are coming from. But I think at the same time, the fact that Chris Smalls was at the Senate hearing and he addressed Lindsey Graham specifically and said, this is not a left-right issue. I think that was phenomenal for him to say.
And we're the ones that are suffering in the corporations that you're talking about, in the businesses that you're talking about, in the warehouses that you're talking about. So that's the reason why I think I was invited today to speak on that behalf. And you should listen because we do represent your constituents as well. So just take that into consideration that the people are the ones that make these corporations go. It's not the other way around.
That's right, because there's Amazon warehouses in South Carolina as well. I know I went to college in South Carolina, so I'm just telling you, like, that represents his constituents as well.
So as the current interim president of the Amazon Labor Union, who represent 8,300 workers in Staten Island, an independent worker-led union that won their election on April 1st, I'm going to tell you this. We organized for over a year. And throughout the course of that year, Amazon spent millions of dollars, as you mentioned, Senator Sanders. Myself, including a few other organizers, was arrested outside for organizing, arrested for delivering food to their coworkers. I wanted to reiterate that as well. You know, the type of things that Amazon do, breaking the law, intimidation, these are real things that traumatize workers in this country.
Exactly. Would you feel comfortable going back to your place of employment if you knew that they were arresting people for trying to organize? No, I wouldn't feel comfortable going back there. A lot of intimidation. They put a lot of fear into you so that you won't try to get the rights that you deserve. This is how corrupt and conniving Amazon is. You have the largest company in the United States, or second largest. I forget if it's second or first, but either Walmart's first and they're second, whichever. Jeff Bezos is filthy rich, and they don't even want the people to have basic rights. I shouldn't have to hear about people having to pee in water bottles because they don't get a long enough break. That's Amazon. Let's go back in.
You know, thousands of workers across this country who are in the process of organizing, who have the desire to organize in the United States. We want to feel that we have protections. We want to feel that the government is allowing us to use our constitutional rights to organize. The notion that people in the united in this democracy will outmatch tyranny is the oldest American ideal. There's clearly defined legal process to do this, and workers like us have the rights protected by the First Amendment and the National Labor Relations Act. However, despite all of this, our victory in Staten Island was lauded as newsworthy and inspirational for the thousands of workers across the country, hundreds of thousands of workers. And even though we may have won, we did everything right, pressuring Amazon to recognize our victory and comply with our legal obligation to meet us at the bargaining table. But Amazon is refusing to do so. As you mentioned, they're going to stall. They filed 25 objections, and they got the NLRB to move the hearing to a whole nother location.
Yep.
To me, it just sounds like the corporations have the control and they control whatever they want.
And they also control the politicians. They do control whatever they want. And you notice Chris Moss said they did everything that they were supposed to do and they did it the right way. They followed the process, they followed the correct steps, and Amazon is still trying to prevent them from having a union. That's the power of the corporation. That's why they're so powerful. The way that they can treat the workers, the way that they can treat the politicians, the hold that they can have over people. That's the corrupt corporations. Off topic, but I know this is another reason why we need to get money out of politics. Because look at how they control the politicians. The politicians are passing legislation that support corporate interests, at least in DC. Local level can be a little bit different, but in DC, it has to have some type of support for corporate interests. Otherwise, it doesn't get passed. It's a problem.
They break the law, they get away with it. They know that already, that breaking the law during these election campaigns won't be resolved during the election campaigns. So they purposely continue to break the law. For example, we filed over 40 ULPs in 11 months. Most of them are, quite a few of them got merit for further action. Some of them even got injunctions. For example, Gerald Bryson was fired 2 years ago. Finally, 2 years later, over 2 years later, there's a 10J in motion for his reinstatement. Another prime example, Daquan Smith was fired by the company for organizing.
Yep.
He's still out of a job. He's living in a shelter right now. We raised money through GoFundMe.
All right. Did you guys just hear that? They fired one of their employees because he was trying to organize. Remember, they did that to Chris Moss too. But he's living in a shelter now because he lost his job. See, they try to take everything from you so that you have nothing, so that you will not fight. Notice Chris said they had a GoFundMe to raise money for him. This is where the mutual aid part comes in. This is why we continue to tell you guys, especially over at RBN, that mutual aid is so important. When people go on strike, they usually have some type of mutual aid system in place. I saw that with the coal miners that went on strike in Alabama. I saw that with the Kellogg strike when we had them come on RBN. You need some type of mutual aid set up. But the fact that this man is living in a shelter because he got fired, not because he tried to hurt someone at work, he tried to physically harm someone, not because he threatened to harm someone, but because he was just trying to organize. They fired him and he became homeless. This is what happens in a capitalist society. This is the problem with capitalism. The people at the top have all the money and they give the people at the bottom just enough to get by. And anytime the people at the bottom decide that they want more because they deserve more, the people at the top will do everything they can to try to stop them. They'll try to prevent them from organizing. And even if the workers are successful, then the people at the top will fire them, which should be illegal, by the way. That should be illegal. You shouldn't be able to fire someone because they're trying to organize. But this is what happens when you have certain states that have these iffy employment laws, these at-will employment states where they can fire you for no reason. I think that needs to go too. But that's a whole other conversation. Let's go back in.
These are just a few examples, including myself, who's been out of a job for the last 2 years. I want to just end off by saying this. We need to pass the PRO Act so that workers are protected and workers are encouraged to organize. And if that don't work, I'm going to let you know right now that on behalf of the Amazon Labor Union and the hundreds of thousands of workers across this country that we will continue to organize.
He said, I'm going to let you know. He said, I'm going to let you know right now.
And once again, I want to remind you that this is not a left or right thing. This is a working class issue.
And he said it again, just in case Lindsey Graham forgot the beginning of that discussion. He's reminding him again, this is not a left-right issue. This is a workers' right issue.
And the workers at the bottom are the ones who make these corporations go. Thank you.
Yep. All right, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. So kudos to Chris Smalls. One thing I think is really cool about him is notice how he went to a Senate hearing. He didn't change his appearance. Some people, you know, they get invited to these events and they're like, oh, let me put on a suit and a tie and let me slick my hair back and let me do. No, Chris showed up as himself. He showed up as himself with his jacket that says eat the rich, his baseball cap. He came as he was. And I appreciate that. Sometimes people, they start to get national attention and they start to change. Just being real. I've seen that happen with a couple of people. Now, he also got to meet President Biden, and some people were not happy about that. I want to go ahead and show that picture. So he got to meet President Biden, and what you don't see in this picture is Kamala Harris is in this picture somewhere, but in this image, someone cut her out. That's okay. But I'm sorry. That's wrong, you guys. But yeah, so he got to meet Joe Biden. And this is from Follow the Money and Vote Accordingly. Said, this picture made my day. Eat the rich. You're incredible, Christian Smalls. And he tagged Joe Biden in this picture as well. So what do people have a problem with? So talking to people online, some people do not like the fact that Chris Smalls met Joe Biden. They feel like the Democrats are going to co-opt this movement. Now, I have seen the Democratic Party do this again, like I told you earlier in the show. They do have a tendency to do that, like take these issues, Black Lives Matter, the George Floyd movement, protests, they do have a way of getting their hand on things and trying to co-opt it. So I do understand where people are coming from, the people that mention that they're like, no, the Democrats are going to get a hold of this. Like, why is he talking to Joe Biden? Don't go talk to the politicians. But I also understand the other side of it, where we tell people to hold politicians accountable. And one way that you can hold them accountable is by putting the issue in their face. So if you get the opportunity to go meet Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Lindsey Graham, and bring this issue to their face, it also gets more national attention, by the way. I think you should do it. Now, that doesn't mean that Chris Smalls is friends with Joe Biden. That does not mean that Chris Smalls supports Joe Biden. I want to make sure I put that out very clear, because I saw some people on social media saying, oh, no, he's a Biden bro now. And I'm like, I don't think so. When I interviewed Chris Smalls, he was supporting Dianne Morales. She was running for mayor in New York City. Some things happened with her campaign. I can't get all into it tonight, but that's who he was supporting. Dianne Morales was the progressive candidate, and she was very much supported by the union workers in New York City. The labor movement really liked Dianne Morales. She was also an educator at one point. So anyway, they saw her as one of them, one of the working class people. So for the people, I think, who are upset about this, look, you got to put it in their face. Like, if they invite you, go there and give them all you got. And that's what Chris did. He told Lindsey Graham, this is not a left or right issue. Now, I don't know how many people have seen this hearing, but I'm guessing it's a lot of people. Now that message has gotten across to so many other people. So many other people sitting at home thinking to themselves, wait a minute, I may have been looking at this the wrong way. I hear Fox News talk about it one way. I hear, CNN talk about it another way. Maybe this is not a left-right issue after all. Maybe if I'm a worker, I should support it because I'm a worker. So when you get those opportunities, I say go ahead and take them and go meet those politicians. When they ask you to come meet them, go meet them and give them all you got. Let them know exactly how you feel. Let them know the problems. That's my take on it. But I do understand where people are coming from about the Democratic Party co-opting things. I want to give a shout out to Black in the Empire for the super chat. Thanks so much. Love you, Sabby. Poor man's tip. Support her work. Thank you so much. And thank you for the super chat as well, Zero Campbell. Maui is with you. Aloha, Sabs. All right. Hawaii's in the house. Baba said, I'd take a pic with my eyes crossed. Oh, man. Oh, man. That being said, Joe Biden's full of it because he's going to sit here and take a picture with Chris Smalls, and he also shook his hand and pretend like he actually cares about unions. But Mr. David Soretta was kind enough to let us all know, big news, the Biden administration just gave Amazon a massive government contract as it was busting a union. The contract was ratified even as Biden is under mounting pressure to fulfill his promise to deny such contracts to union busters. So he sat there and he shook hands with Chris Smalls. He's smiling, pretending to do the damn thing. And at the same time, he gave another government contract to Amazon. So he gave Amazon more money after you just heard a speech from a former Amazon worker who just organized the first Amazon union, telling you about how corrupt the company was and how they treated the workers, and he gave them more money. He did this same concept with the police. You saw all those people protesting after George Floyd was murdered. And what did Joe Biden do? He sat there, met with the family, invited them to the White House, shook their hands. And at the same time, he gave the police more money. I don't agree with David Soretta on everything, but he's right here. Biden is wrong. So thank you, David, for pointing this out. So here's the article here. The president promised to halt federal contracts to union busters, but the deal was just re-awarded to Amazon while the company was crushing a union drive. Like $10 billion. The Biden administration has re-awarded a massive $10 billion federal contract to Amazon, even as the president is facing mounting pressure to fulfill his promise to halt such contracts to companies that refuse to remain neutral in union elections. So once again, Joe Biden lied. Surprise. Do you see how they play you? You see how these politicians play us? Not saying he played Chris, but I'm saying, you see how he put on a smile and pretend like he's for something, and behind the scenes, he's giving money to prevent something like that from happening again? He's giving that same money more. Where did this, by the way, this $10 billion, where'd that money come from? Why are you giving Amazon money? Why are you even giving Amazon a contract? Can't give us anything, though. It's all theater. It's all theater.